The rain had stopped, but the forest still dripped like a broken faucet. Ethan Blake staggered through the mist, each step sinking into black soil. His clothes were torn, his pack was gone. The crash still echoed in his head, the scream of metal as his small survey shuttle ripped through the alien sky and slammed into the endless trees. He pressed a hand against his ribs. Pain burned like a knife. Breathing hurt, but he forced himself to keep moving. Stopping meant dying. Had seen the sparks when the engine burst. No one knew he had changed course to map the southern continent. No one would come. The forest smelled of wet stone and strange flowers. Blue vines glowed faintly in the dusk, lighting his path with a ghostly shine. It should have been beautiful, but the beauty felt cruel. Every sound, the hiss of leaves, the soft thump of distant wings reminded him he was alone on a world that did not care if he lived. Hours passed. He found a fallen log and leaned against it. His breath came in short gasps. The alien night fell fast, a sudden curtain of black pierced by stars he did not know. His stomach cramped with hunger. He whispered to himself, voice shaking, "Stay awake. Just a little longer." But exhaustion won. A sharp snap of wood woke him. Moonlight, pale and silver, washed the clearing. Something moved between the trees, several shapes, silent as shadows. He sat up, heart pounding. They were tall, their outlines slim but strong, skin reflecting the faint glow of the vines. Not animals, not men, not like anything from Earth. The figures stepped closer. He saw faces, angular yet soft, eyes bright like molten copper, hair braided with feathers and silver leaves. They wore armor made of woven bark and shimmering cloth. All were women. All watched him with steady, unreadable eyes. Ethan tried to speak, but his throat felt dry. One of them raised a hand, palm outward, a gesture both calming and commanding. Another knelt, tilting her head, studying his torn jacket and the dark stain of blood at his side. Their voices, when they spoke to each other, sounded like music, low, flowing, layered with echoes. He caught no words, only the rhythm of concern. He tried again. "My ship crashed," he said, the words a whisper. "I'm human. I need help." They looked at him as if the sounds meant nothing, but their eyes softened. The kneeling woman touched a necklace of small glowing stones. She pointed at his wound, then at her own chest, then pressed her hand to the earth. The meaning was simple. Hurt. Life. Stay. Ethan felt tears burn his eyes. He had never felt so small, so far from everything known. Yet in their silent care there was no threat, only a quiet strength. One woman stepped forward, taller than the rest. Her presence filled the clearing like the first warm breeze after winter. She extended a hand. He hesitated. Every survival rule said to stay cautious. But the night was cold and his body weak. He placed his shaking hand in hers. Her skin was cool and smooth, with a faint pulse like distant thunder. She gave a gentle tug, helping him rise. The tribe formed a circle around him, their movements graceful and sure. A faint scent of herbs and wild rain followed them as they guided him into the forest. They moved like wind through the trees. Roots and rocks that had tripped him before seemed to bend away from their feet. Ethan stumbled often, but each time someone caught his arm or steadied his shoulder. No words were spoken, yet he felt the rhythm of their breath, the silent promise that he would not be left behind. At last they reached a clearing where giant flowers glowed, white as moons. In the center stood tall shelters of woven reeds and crystal, panels that shimmered like water, a village hidden alive, breathing with the night. Children peeked from doorways, their small faces curious. Older women emerged, carrying bowls of steaming light. Soft murmurs filled the air, not alarmed but welcoming, like the sound of waves against sand. The tall leader guided Ethan to a platform covered in thick moss. Two others brought cloths soaked in a sweet-smelling liquid. They worked with gentle precision, cleaning his wound, binding his ribs with strips of shining fiber. He winced but did not resist. The pain was sharp, but so was the comfort of hands that cared. When they finished, the leader touched the center of her chest and spoke a single word, slow and clear. "Sha-Len." Ethan understood. Her name. He tapped his own chest. Ethan. She repeated it softly, the sound reshaped by her accent. Ethun. The tribe echoed it, a chorus of new voices carrying his name into the night. Later, as he lay beneath a canopy of silver leaves, he watched their village glow with quiet light. He thought of Earth, of the metal cities, the endless noise, the faces that never stopped, moving. Here there was only the rhythm of the forest and the soft hum of alien. Life fear still coiled inside him. Was alone on a planet that might never let him. Yet when he closed his eyes, the last thing he saw was Shalen's calm gaze. A silent promise stronger than words. You are not lost now. Sleep took him with that thought, and for the first time since the crash, the darkness felt like a blanket instead of a tomb. Morning came with a soft blue light that shimmered through the crystal roofs. Ethan woke to the sound of distant singing. It was not like any music he knew. The notes rose and fell like birds in flight, weaving together into a calm that settled deep inside his chest. His ribs ached when he sat up, but the pain was dull now. Wrapped tight by the strange silver bandages, he touched them and felt a gentle warmth as if the cloth itself was alive. He wondered if it was medicine or magic, or both. Outside, the village moved with quiet purpose. Women carried baskets of bright fruit that glowed like tiny suns. Children chased each other between the reed houses, laughing in soft echoes. The air smelled of sweet moss and something sharp, like mint. Shalen approached with a bowl of clear water. Her copper eyes met his, steady and kind. She pointed to the bowl, then to him. Ethan smiled a little and whispered, "Thank you," though he knew she did not understand. He drank. The water was cool and tasted faintly of flowers. When he tried to stand, Shalen raised a hand signaling caution, but Ethan needed to move. He stepped outside, careful and slow. The villagers paused to watch him. Their faces showed curiosity but no fear. Some of the children crept closer, eyes wide. One girl reached out, touching his sleeve with a giggle before running back to her. "Friends." The sound made Ethan laugh. For the first time since the crash, Shalen led him toward the edge of the clearing. Beyond, it stretched the endless forest, alive with a morning mist. She gestured to the trees, then to the sky where two suns climbed side by side. Their light painted the clouds in shades of gold and pale green. "Beautiful," Ethan whispered. He wished he could share the word with her. Shalen crouched and drew symbols in the damp soil. A circle for the suns, a long shape for the river, a spiral for the village. Then she tapped her chest and said slowly, "Na'ari." Ethan pointed at the spiral. "Na'ari," he repeated. Her eyes brightened with approval. He pointed at himself. "Ethan." She nodded, then touched the twin suns and spoke another word. A gentle hum he could not quite copy, still he tried. Her laughter, low and warm, filled the air. For a moment the distance between their worlds felt smaller. As the day warmed, more villagers joined them. They brought strange fruits in small clay cups filled with a thick blue drink. It tasted sweet, with a hint of spice that left his tongue tingling. He felt strength return to his limbs, a quiet fire spreading through his body. A younger woman with short silver hair approached, carrying a carved stick. She tapped the ground and made a series of sharp clicks with her tongue. The others answered in rhythm, a kind of music that seemed to guide their steps. They began to teach him, pointing to objects, the tree, the water, the sky, speaking the Na'ari words. Ethan repeated each sound carefully. Tree. Asha. Water. Loon. Sky. Vera. He stumbled on the sounds, but they clapped softly each time he tried. The warmth of their encouragement stirred something in him, a reminder of how humans learn together, slowly, patiently, with laughter. Later, Shalen led him to a wide platform where women worked with long blades of crystal. They shaped them into tools, each movement precise and smooth. The sound of crystal striking stone rang like tiny bells. Ethan watched in awe. Technology and nature were one here. Nothing seemed wasted. He noticed how the tribe moved as a single rhythm. Some wove baskets from glowing reeds. Others tended to hanging gardens of luminous vines. Even the children helped, bringing water or singing to the plants. It was a life without hurry, but full of purpose. Ethan's chest tightened with unexpected feeling. On Earth, every day was a race, deadlines, signals, noise. Here, time breathed differently. He felt both like an intruder and like someone who had found a missing piece of himself. In the late afternoon, dark clouds gathered without warning. The air grew heavy, filled with the scent of metal and rain. Shalin touched his arm and spoke a quick phrase to the others. The tribe began to move fast, securing their gardens and covering the crystal tools. A sudden gust bent the giant flowers. Lightning split the sky, green and silver. Ethan shivered. He remembered the violent storm that had brought down his ship. Shalin pulled him toward a large shelter built into the trunk of a living tree. Inside, the walls glowed faintly, warm against the storm's roar. The villagers gathered close, their voices blending into a low chant. The sound was steady like the heartbeat of the earth. Ethan sat among them, the chant vibrating through his bones. He felt fear drain away, replaced by a strange calm. When he looked at Shalin, she met his gaze and offered a small, reassuring nod. The storm raged for hours, but inside the treehouse there was only the soft light and the strength of many hearts beating together. For the first time since the crash, Ethan felt something stronger than survival. He felt safe. When the rain eased, the tribe stepped outside. The sky was dark again, but the air smelled fresh and alive. Shalin led Ethan to a high ridge overlooking the forest. From there he could see the moons, two pale giants rising side by side. Their light turned the wet leaves into rivers of silver. Ethan let out a long breath. This world is alive, he said quietly, almost to himself. Shalin stood beside him, silent but present. She pointed to the twin moons and spoke a single word, slow and deep. Hara. He repeated it. Hara, she smiled, a real, bright smile that reached her copper eyes. In that moment, Ethan felt a bond forming. A thread of trust spun across the impossible distance between their worlds. He thought of the broken ship miles away, of the life he might never return to. The thought still hurt, but standing under alien moons with Shalin beside him, he no longer felt lost. He felt found. The next morning arrived warm and bright. Bird-like creatures with silver wings glided above the village, their calls soft as chimes. Ethan woke to the gentle hum of the tribe preparing for the day. His body ached less now. The strange silver bandages had healed more in 2 nights than any medicine he knew. He stepped outside and breathed in the cool air, the smell of damp earth and wildflowers wrapped around him. Shalin waited near the moss platform, holding a small basket of fruit that glowed faintly, like sunrise trapped in glass. She offered it with a quiet smile. Ethan took a piece. The skin felt warm, the taste a mix of honey and bright citrus. He felt energy rush through him, a calm strength that eased the last traces of pain. He said softly, "Thank you." Though she didn't understand the word, her eyes answered with kindness. Later that day, a group of Na'ari women invited Ethan to follow them beyond the village. Shalin walked at his side, her tall frame steady and sure. They moved along a narrow trail where vines shone with a faint blue glow. The forest here was different, darker, but alive with hidden lights. The women stopped at a clearing where a wide river curved like a silver snake. They began gathering long reeds and crystal stones, placing them in carved baskets. Ethan realized this was their way of collecting supplies for tools and shelter. Shalin handed him a smooth blade of crystal. Tilting her head in question, Ethan gripped it carefully and joined them, cutting reeds as they did. At first his strokes were clumsy, but he watched their rhythm, swift, precise, almost like a dance. Soon he matched their movements. A young girl with bright amber eyes clapped softly, her laughter a ringing bell. For a moment, Ethan forgot he was from another world. He felt like part of their circle, working with them as if he belonged. On their way back, a sudden sound shattered the peace, a deep growl that vibrated through the ground. The women froze. Shalin raised her hand, signaling silence. From the shadows stepped a creature unlike anything Ethan had seen. Its body was low and broad, skin dark and scaled like wet stone. Four eyes glowed red, and its claws cut deep into the earth. The creature let out another roar. Ethan's heart raced. He gripped the crystal blade. Though it felt useless against such a beast, Shalyn stood tall, her face calm but fierce. Two hunters from the tribe raised long spears that gleamed with sharp crystal points. The animal lunged. The hunters moved with breathtaking speed, weaving around the creature's strikes. Shalyn stepped forward. Her spear a flash of light, she struck with a sharp cry. The sound echoing like thunder. The beast reeled, then vanished into the thick trees with a final roar. Silence fell heavy. Ethan's hands trembled. He had seen danger before. Storms, machines, but this was raw and wild. Shalyn turned to him, eyes scanning for injury. When she saw he was unharmed, she touched his shoulder gently, a silent comfort. He met her gaze and whispered, "You saved us," though she could not know the words. She seemed to feel their weight. Back in the village, the women gathered around the hunters, offering chants of gratitude. They lit a small fire of blue flame, placing crystal stones around it. Ethan watched as they bowed their heads and sang low, steady notes. The sound was not just celebration, it was respect, a thank you to the forest for balance and life. Shalyn guided Ethan to sit beside her near the fire. The light reflected in her copper eyes like distant stars. For the first time, Ethan felt more than curiosity toward her. It was a quiet pull, a sense that their spirits touched beyond language. He wondered what she thought of him, a stranger who fell from the sky, weak and lost. Yet she had never looked at him with pity, only with a calm belief that he had a place here, if he chose it. That night, as the village slept, Ethan lay awake beneath the glowing canopy. His mind wandered to Earth. The roar of shuttle engines, the crowded cities, the endless stream of messages and commands. Would anyone be searching for him? Did they think he was dead? He imagined a rescue ship cutting through the atmosphere, lights flashing in the dark sky. The thought should have filled him with hope. Instead, it brought a strange ache. He was beginning to feel at home here, in the rhythm of the Na'ari, in Shalyn's steady presence. Was he ready to leave if the chance came? The question burned in his chest. He missed the sound of human voices, yet he had found a different kind of family, one that needed no words. He thought of the river, the work, the shared laughter, the courage in Shalyn's eyes when the beast attacked. The bond between them felt real. Alive, he whispered to the silent night, "What if I stay?" The stars above gave no answer, only their cold, endless light. Before dawn, a soft rustle woke him. Shalyn stood nearby, holding a small torch of pale flame. She met his eyes, then pointed toward the ridge that overlooked the forest. Without a word, he followed. They climbed in quiet steps. At the top, the twin suns began to rise, casting the world in green-gold fire. Mist curled through the trees like slow rivers of silver. Shalyn turned to him, her face painted by the first light. She placed a hand over her heart, then touched the same spot on his chest. Her gesture carried no need for translation. Ethan's breath caught. It was trust. It was welcome. It was the unspoken truth that, even if he was not born of their world, he belonged to it now in some small way. He placed his hand over hers. In the quiet glow of two suns, their eyes met. Two lives from different skies, bound by the simple courage to care. The days that followed settled into a quiet rhythm. Ethan worked beside the Na'ari as though he had lived there all his life. He learned how to weave the glowing reeds into strong baskets and how to sharpen crystal blades until they sang when struck. The villagers laughed when his knots slipped or his cuts went crooked, but their laughter was warm, never cruel. Every evening the twin moons rose over the forest. Their silver light spread across the village like a soft blanket. Ethan often sat with Shalyn at the ridge, sharing silent moments while the world below breathed in shadows and light. Sometimes she would trace shapes in the dirt, spirals, waves, stars, and teach him their names. He tried each strange sound, and she smiled when he got close. Though he felt a deep calm, a part of him still carried the ache of another sky. He wondered if anyone from Earth had survived the storm of broken metal and fire that had swallowed his shuttle. He thought of his sister back home, the way she teased him about his restless spirit. Would she believe he was alive, living among stars she would never see? One afternoon, while helping gather crystal from a riverbank, Ethan noticed something odd, high above the treetops. A flash of silver streaked across the pale sky. It was quick, almost a glint of sunlight, but too straight, too bright. His heart thudded. A ship. Maybe a rescue beacon. He froze, staring upward until the light disappeared behind a cloud. For the first time in many days, the quiet forest felt smaller. A piece of his old world had just brushed the edge of this one. Shalin noticed his stillness. She followed his gaze, copper eyes narrowing at the empty sky. She said something soft, a question in the musical Na'ari tongue. Ethan pointed upward, mimicking the streak of light. Her expression tightened. She spoke quickly to the others. They exchanged glances, concern rippling through the group like a sudden wind. One woman touched Ethan's arm gently, as if to comfort him, but her eyes held warning. That evening, the village gathered in a wide circle around a tall fire of blue flame. The air pulsed with low chanting, deeper than the songs Ethan had heard before. Elders stepped forward, faces painted in glowing patterns. They spoke in slow, deliberate tones. Shalin guided Ethan to sit beside her. She pointed to the sky and drew a bright line with her hand, then made a sharp gesture downward, like a falling star. Her eyes searched his for understanding. He thought of the flash he had seen. Was it dangerous to them? Or was it his people finally searching for him? He felt torn, a rope pulled between two worlds. Part of him ached to signal the ship, to prove he was alive and find his way home. Another part wanted nothing more than to stay where the air smelled of rain and crystal, where Shalin's quiet presence had become the center of his days. Late that night, while the others slept, Ethan slipped away to the ridge. The sky blazed, with stars and the slow dance of the twin moons. He turned on the small emergency beacon still clipped to his belt, one of the few things he had, saved from the crash. Its red light blinked weakly, a heartbeat in the dark. He stared at it, thumb hovering over the switch that would send a signal across the endless void. One press, and a rescue team might find him. One press, and this life of silent mornings and luminous nights would vanish. Behind him, a soft step on moss. Shalin. She approached quietly, her silver hair catching moonlight. She looked at the beacon, then at him. No words passed between them. Her eyes held a question and a sadness that pierced him deeper than any blade. Ethan tried to explain with gestures, pointing to the beacon, then to the stars, then to his own chest. "I came from out there," he whispered, though he knew she could not understand the words. "I might have to leave." Shalin stepped closer and placed her hand over his. Her touch was warm, steady. She lifted his hand from the beacon and pressed it gently to his heart. Then she touched her own chest. The meaning was clear. Here, now. His throat tightened. He wanted to stay in that quiet forever. But a soft beep from the beacon broke the moment, a faint confirmation that it had caught a distant signal. Shalin's eyes flickered with something he could not name, not anger, not fear, something deeper, like understanding that hurt. She turned slightly toward the forest, then back to him as if saying, "Whatever you choose, you are still one of us." The next day, the tribe prepared for a long journey to a sacred place Ethan had never seen. Shalin explained through signs and simple words he had learned. High ground, sky, listen. They set out at dawn, carrying baskets of fruit and crystal water. The path grew steep, climbing through ancient trees whose trunks glowed with soft blue veins. Ethan felt the thin air tighten in his lungs, but he kept pace. By late afternoon, they reached a plateau where the world stretched out like a living map. Rivers shone like silver threads. Mountains cut the horizon in jagged peaks. Above, the sky widened into a deep green-blue ocean of light. The tribe formed a circle and began to sing. Their voices rose and fell with the wind, blending with the low hum of the earth itself. Ethan stood beside Shalin, the song vibrating through his bones. In that moment, he felt the weight of both worlds. Somewhere beyond those stars, a ship might already be searching. Here, the Na'ari offered a different kind of home, one built on trust and quiet courage. Shalin turned to him, her face calm yet full of something unspoken. She touched the center of his chest once more, the same gesture she had made on the ridge. Her eyes held steady as if to say, "No matter what you decide, you belong to the sky and to us." Ethan's heart pounded. The beacon's faint signal pulsed at his belt, a reminder of the choice waiting ahead. He looked at the endless forest, at the twin moons rising like silent guardians. For the first time, he did not know which sky was truly his. Dawn spilled over the plateau in a soft green light. The Na'ari tribe stirred quietly, packing baskets and folding the woven mats they had slept on. Ethan woke with a heavy mind. The beacon at his belt blinked faintly, a steady reminder of the world beyond these trees. Xiaolin approached carrying a small cup of warm blue tea. Her copper eyes met his with a calm that always steadied him. She handed him the cup, and he felt the soft brush of her fingers. The warmth of her touch made his chest tighten. He sipped the drink. It tasted of sweet moss and spice, a flavor that had come to mean comfort. But the quiet around them felt different today. The air held a weight, as if the forest itself knew a decision waited. The tribe began the slow walk back toward their village. Bird-like creatures with silver wings glided across the rising suns, their cries echoing in the mist. Ethan walked beside Xiaolin, his thoughts tangled. Somewhere in the wide sky, a rescue ship might be tracing the weak signal of his beacon. He could almost hear the static of human voices calling his name, yet each step through the glowing forest deepened his bond with the Na'ari. He remembered the laughter of the children, the rhythm of their work, the quiet strength of their songs. He felt the calm pulse of this place inside him, a heartbeat that matched his own. They crossed a narrow bridge of living vines. Beneath it, a river shimmered like a path of stars. Xiaolin stopped at the center, waiting for him. She placed a hand on the vine rail and looked at him with steady eyes. Ethan rested his palm beside hers. They stood in silence, the forest's music filling the space between them. No words were needed. He knew she sensed his unrest. She did not try to change his mind. She simply stood with him, present and unwavering. By late afternoon, the village appeared, glowing softly among the giant flowers. Children ran to greet the returning hunters, their laughter bright as wind chimes. Ethan felt a sudden ache, a quiet longing he could not name. This place had become more than shelter. It was a home. The elders gathered soon after their arrival. They formed a wide circle around a blue fire and began a slow, deep chant. Ethan understood that something important was happening. Xiaolin touched his arm and guided him to the center. An elder stepped forward. Her face was lined with silver patterns that caught the firelight. She spoke in measured tones, each word carrying weight. Though Ethan knew few of their words, he caught fragments. Sky, wanderer. Xiaolin translated as best she could with signs and simple Na'ari words he had learned. The elder was asking, "Will you stay, or will you follow the sky?" The circle fell silent. Only the crackle of the blue flame broke the stillness. Dozens of eyes watched him, kind, patient waiting. Ethan's throat tightened. He thought of his sister's smile, of Earth's vast oceans and the hum of cities. He thought of the crash, of loneliness and fear. And then he thought of Xiaolin's steady gaze, of nights beneath twin moons, of a life shaped by song and quiet strength. He stepped forward, heart pounding. He placed a hand on his chest, then lifted it toward the stars. "I came from there," he said softly. "Even though they could not know the words, I still have family." The elder inclined her head, understanding more than language could give. Ethan lowered his hand and touched the earth. "But you," his voice broke, "you saved me. You gave me life." Xiaolin moved to his side. She placed her hand over his heart and whispered, "Ethan?" "Na'ari." The tribe echoed the word Na'ari, their voices rising like wind through crystal leaves. He felt the sound vibrate in his bones. It was not a claim of ownership. It was welcome, a promise that no matter what he chose, he would always be part of them. That night he lay awake beneath the glowing canopy. The beacon still blinked faint red. One press would summon a rescue craft. One press would end this chapter of his life forever. He remembered the beast in the forest, the storm that had almost killed him, the loneliness that had nearly broken him. And he remembered Shalen's hand finding his in the dark, the tribe's laughter, the music of their chants. He felt two worlds pulling at his heart, neither stronger, both real. He rose quietly and walked to the ridge. The twin moons hung low, silver paths across the endless sky. He held the beacon in his palm, its tiny light blinking like a restless heartbeat. Behind him, he heard a soft step. Shalen. She came to stand beside him without a word. The night wind stirred her silver hair. They watched the sky together, the silence deep and gentle. Ethan lifted the beacon so she could see. Her eyes reflected the red pulse. He closed his fingers around it, then slowly opened his hand again. Showing her that the decision was still his, Shalen touched his wrist lightly and whispered a single word. Choice. The Na'ari had no word for goodbye, but they knew the meaning of freedom. Ethan felt tears blur the moons. He looked at the sky. Then at her. Choice, he echoed hours later. The beacon lay quiet in his hand. He pressed it once, then again, sending a final signal into the endless dark. Whether anyone would hear it, he did not know. But he felt at peace. He had chosen to reach out, to tell the universe where he was while still holding close the life he had found here. Shalen slipped her hand into his. No matter what came, rescue or silence, they would face it, together. Under the twin moons, Ethan finally understood. Home was not only a place, it was the people who found you when you were lost and the love that let you choose your path. The following days passed in a quiet haze of waiting. The Na'ari continued their lives, singing at dawn, weaving reeds, gathering crystal water from the shining river, but a subtle change lingered in the air. Everyone had heard the faint message in Ethan's eyes the night he pressed the beacon. They knew something might come from the sky. Ethan felt it too. Every morning he looked upward, half expecting to see a flash of metal against the soft green clouds, but the sky stayed silent except for drifting birds and the slow dance of the twin suns. He worked with the tribe as usual. He helped mend the moss paths, carried baskets of glowing fruit, and joined the children in their laughter. Yet inside him, a quiet tension coiled like a drawn bow. He did not know whether he wanted the rescue signal to succeed or fade into the endless dark. One evening, as the twin moons began their climb, a distant rumble broke the forest calm. At first it sounded like thunder, then a low vibration trembled through the ground, a sound too steady, too sharp. Ethan froze. He knew that sound. Engines. The Na'ari looked to the sky, eyes wide. A streak of silver pierced the clouds, trailing a faint glow. The ship. Someone had found him, the villagers murmured, their voices a mix of awe and worry. Shalen stepped to Ethan's side, her copper eyes searching his face. He felt his heartbeat quicken until it echoed in his ears. The ship circled far above, a distant spark against the darkening sky, then drifted away beyond the horizon. It did not land, but its presence left the air charged, heavy with unspoken questions. That night the village gathered around the blue fire. The elders sang a song lower and slower than any Ethan had heard. The melody carried both comfort and sorrow. Like the memory of rain on a dry earth, Ethan sat among them, the flicker of the flames painting shadows across his face. Shalen touched his shoulder, silent but strong. He thought of the people inside that ship, search teams, maybe friends, maybe strangers, flying above this world with scanners and maps, so close and yet impossibly far. Would they come back? Would they search again? If they landed, would he leave? He closed his eyes and listened to the Na'ari chant. The sound felt like the heartbeat of the forest itself. It reached into the hollow place inside him and steadied the storm of his thoughts. Days passed with no return of the ship. Still, the question of choice lingered like a shadow. Ethan found himself walking alone to the ridge each evening, staring at the wide sky until the stars blurred into silver mist. Sometimes Shalen joined him, bringing a quiet presence that needed no words. One night she brought a small gift, a crystal shard the size of his palm. It glowed faintly with its own light. She placed it in his hand and spoke a single word. Memory. Ethan turned the shard over. It pulsed with a gentle warmth, almost like a heartbeat. He looked at her, trying to understand. Shallan tapped the shard, then touched her own heart. To remember. Emotion rose sharp and sudden in his chest. He thought of Earth, of his sister, of everything he might never see again. He thought of this tribe, of the quiet love that had taken him in. He whispered, "Thank you," though the words were small beside what he felt. Shallan only smiled and brushed a strand of hair from his forehead. The next morning, a message finally came. Ethan woke to find his emergency communicator, an old device he had kept near the beacon, flashing weak green. A voice cracked through the static, distant but clear enough to pierce his heart. Surveyor Ethan Blake, receiving faint signal. Identify coordinates. His breath caught human voices. Home. The Na'ari gathered as he held the small device, their faces full of quiet curiosity. Shallan tilted her head, listening to the strange sounds. Ethan met her gaze. He didn't need words to see she understood what it meant. He raised the device and spoke, his voice unsteady. "This is Ethan Blake, alive. But I am not alone, I am safe," Static answered. Then the voice again. "Signal locked. Stand by for retrieval." The message ended in a soft hiss. The village remained still. Ethan lowered the communicator, his hands trembling. Shallan stepped forward and touched his arm. Her eyes held no fear, only a quiet acceptance. He tried to explain, pointing to the sky, then to himself, then making the motion of a ship rising. "I might have to leave," he said, though the words felt heavy and strange. Shallan placed a hand on his chest and whispered, "Choice," the same word she had given him on the ridge. Her voice was steady, but he saw the faint shimmer of unshed tears in her copper eyes. The tribe began to sing, low and soft, a melody like wind through distant trees. It was not a song of grief, but of blessing, a gift of strength for whatever path he chose. Ethan felt tears burn his eyes. He whispered, "I don't know what to do." Shallan leaned forward and pressed her forehead gently against his. Her breath was warm, her presence a steady flame. She whispered something he could not translate, but he felt the meaning in his heart. "Follow the path your spirit knows." That night, as the village slept, Ethan walked alone to the ridge. The twin moons hung bright and low, casting silver rivers of light across the forest. He held the communicator, its green light steady, a promise of rescue. He thought of Earth, his sister's laughter, the scent of rain on city streets, the familiar hum of a world he once called home. He thought of the Na'ari, of their songs, their kindness, the gentle strength of Shallan's hand in his. The choice was no longer simple. He had been lost once, a man adrift between stars. Now he had two homes, each calling to a different part of his soul. He knelt on the moss and whispered to the night, "Show me the way." The forest answered only with the quiet rush of wind, as if to say the decision was his alone. Ethan stayed there until the first light of dawn brushed the sky, the crystal shard of memory warm in his palm and the weight of two worlds resting gently on his heart. Dawn broke soft and golden across the treetops. Ethan stood at the ridge as light spilled over the valley, the village. Below glowed like a dream, woven huts catching the early sun, smoke rising in lazy threads, children already chasing each other through the moss paths. He felt the crystal shard in his pocket, warm against his heart behind him. A quiet step touched the moss. Shallan approached, her copper eyes calm, her long hair shining in the light. She said, "Nothing." She simply stood beside him and looked out over the world. They both knew so well. The communicator in Ethan's hand blinked green again. A voice crackled. From its small speaker, "Ethan Blake, retrieval team inbound.
ETA 2 hours.
Prepare for extraction." The words felt heavy. 2 hours. After all these days and nights, time had suddenly become a thin string ready to snap. They walked back to the village together. The Na'ari were waiting, their faces gentle but serious. No one spoke at first. Then Elder Miles stepped forward, her hair silver like moonlight. "You have journeyed far," she said in her slow, musical voice. "You have a home among the stars. But you have a home here too. The river of your heart will choose its own course." Ethan bowed his head. He wanted to explain the confusion inside him, the pull of Earth, the bond with these people, but words felt too small. He simply said, "Thank you, for everything." The elder placed her hand over his. "Wherever you walk, our song walks with you." The village prepared a farewell feast. It was not loud or wild. It was quiet and full of love. They laid bright fruits on woven leaves, poured clear water from crystal flasks, and sang songs that spoke of journeys and safe returns. Children ran to Ethan and wrapped their small arms around his legs. They pressed tiny beads into his hands, gifts of color and laughter. He hugged them, his eyes burning with tears. Shalene stayed close but silent, her presence like a steady flame. Every glance between them carried more meaning than 1,000 words. As the twin suns climbed higher, a shadow crossed the sky. A ship, sleek, silver, unmistakably human, descended through the clouds. The deep thrum of its engines filled the air. The Na'ari stepped back, their eyes wide. Ethan's heart pounded. He had dreamed of this moment when he was lost and half-starved in the wilderness. Now it felt unreal. The ship settled in a clearing beyond the ridge, dust swirling around its landing struts. A hatch hissed open. Figures in bright suits emerged, scanning the area. "Ethan Blake," a voice called through the loudspeaker. "We're here to take you home." The sound of English felt sharp and strange after so long. He took a step forward, then stopped. Shalene reached for his hand. Her touch was warm, alive. Her eyes searched his face, asking the question without words, "Will you stay?" Ethan looked at the ship. He pictured his sister's smile, the faces of people who thought he was dead. He felt the pull of the life he had left behind, the city lights, the familiar skies. Then he looked at Shalene and the Na'ari, at the glowing forest that had healed him and taught him a deeper kind of belonging. 2 worlds, 2 homes. His heart stretched between them until it ached. A voice from the ship called again. "Ethan, we have medical supplies and food. We can take you off this planet now." He turned to Shalene, his throat tight. I don't know what to do," he whispered. She pressed the crystal shard into his palm and closed his fingers around it. "Your spirit knows," she said softly. "Whatever path, the song will follow you." He held her gaze for a long moment, then he stepped forward. The villagers did not stop him. They sang instead, a low, rising melody that filled the air like a living wind. Ethan walked toward the ship, every step echoing with the tribe's song. When he reached the open hatch, a rescue officer reached out to help him, but Ethan paused at the threshold. He turned and looked back one last time. The Na'ari stood in a circle, their voices weaving through the forest. Shalene raised her hand, a silent blessing. In that instant, Ethan understood. Leaving did not mean forgetting. The river of his heart could carry both worlds. Home was not only a place, it was the people and memories that lived inside him. He pressed the crystal shard to his chest and whispered, "I will come back." Shalene nodded once, her eyes shining. The hatch closed with a soft hiss. The ship lifted, engines humming. Through the small window, Ethan watched the forest shrink to a sea of green, the river a silver thread. The Na'ari became tiny points of light, their song still echoing in his ears. As the clouds swallowed the view, Ethan closed his eyes. He felt the warmth of the shard, heard the fading melody, and knew that a part of him would always walk those mossy paths. When the rescue officer asked, "Are you ready to go home?" Ethan opened his eyes and said with a quiet strength, "I already am."